So, welcome to our podcast, Ramadan podcast. And I'm honored to have once again for this episode our good friend and brother and servant leader, Japneet Singh. The last time we spoke about faith and service. And today I see it's necessary for us to speak a little bit about how do you see the transformation of New York now that we have a Muslim mayor, and what does that mean for New York being quite diverse to have someone like Zohran Mamdani being our mayor. So we'll have a discussion centered around that. And I know this is the blessed month of Ramadan, and what does it mean for Muslims to have someone as the mayor who is a Muslim and who advocates for humanity, who advocates for the Muslims in a place where quite often we feel that our voice are not actually heard, or we feel that we have to make extra effort for people to actually hear us, or to even to come to the table for people to actually hear. Now that we have a mayor, what does that actually mean? And I want to welcome my good friend to this discourse and maybe share your thought process. What does it mean for New York to have someone of the Islamic faith um, uh, as the mayor, and how do you see New York in the next 5 years?
First of all, Assalamu alaikum.
Masana?
Sat Shri Akal, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Yeah.
And Ramadan Mubarak to everybody celebrating the blessed month,
Yeah.
Ramadan.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, this is a big moment, not just, in my opinion, for the Muslim community, for the South Asian community, for the African community, for the immigrant community. His identity encapsulates so much of New York, so much of the globe, and it makes it such a very unique moment in time that we have, especially given the fact that the immigrant communities of this city, of this country, are under attack, right? But having someone that is going to stand up, we know whether it's his stance on Palestine, whether it's his stance on immigrant communities being under attack in this country. We know he's always going to stand up, at least for now, for the rights of all people, and for humanity. And I think that's what shined, right, when he was polling less than 2%, as he would say.
Yeah.
And the fact that he came and won the Democratic primary, I think the only way you can make that happen is if you're genuine to who you are, and if you actually mean what you say, right? Because again, like everyone that was running, that was in the race before him, and some that joined after him, they were in politics long before he even thought about getting into politics. So what made him different? And the only thing I could think of is him being genuine and him being honest about who he is, and that is someone that's gonna always stand up for me.
And I think it's important to note, that quite often religious communities in general, that they face very negative feedback when it comes to Islamophobia, xenophobia, because of you wearing a turban. People target you like being a Muslim or someone being the Jewish faith, or practicing their religion. And now that you have someone coming out and say this is a safe space that encapsulate all. It's not that we're going to look at a particular group of people, but everyone, despite of their faith, of their religious background, despite of who they are, we want to make sure every New York have feel that this place is their home. Being a Muslim leader, and I want to share this with our listeners. It's not about Zohran being a Muslim, and I'm not here having discourse, discussing politics, because I know there are those that say, "Oh, we're discussing politics in a Ramadan podcast." This has to do with our lives. This has to do with the lives of our children. And here is it.
And is going to be making decisions for Ramadan.
Yeah.
So that's huge in
Yeah.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm saying that this is someone that looks for the best interest of all and for humanity.
Right.
And every time I listen to him, whether it is on my phone or the television or go to any event he is, that he always speaks to the heart, because what comes first is humanity. And that is what stands out. And that is what we want. At least this is what I look for in leadership, someone that cares for people. And when he speaks passionately about service, about safety. And I think it brings a sense of hope. I went to a workshop and they were asking some Muslim leaders, what does it mean to you uh, as a Muslim that you have someone there at the realm who is a Muslim. I said, I do not look at his faith, but I look at what he stands for. And what does that mean for your community that you are seeing someone openly advocating for all? How does that
So I think
your community?
you hit the point so strong, right? It's not about his faith. It's about the content of his character.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take you back to a time when he first got elected to the state assembly. A few months in, there was a big issue going on in India, the farmers' protest. He was one of the only elected officials to speak upon it. In 2023, there was a mass media blackout that happened in Punjab in India. He also spoke upon that. Right? He also spoke up against that. Right? Anytime human rights are being violated, actually, even at the same time in 2023, a few months later, he's always been there, right? Whether he's a state assembly member, whether he's the mayor now, I think it's who he is, and that shined through religion, that shined through faith, that shined through background, ethnicity, all that, right? I think people really saw him for being a genuine human being. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there wasn't enough money in the world to make him lose that election. Think about that. They spent millions of dollars to make him lose, right? They used every racist word in the book to
Yeah.
diminish his religion, diminish his background. He still won, right? So, and
What pulled you towards him? Because I know you campaigned to some extent
yeah. So
for him.
look, I mean, I've known of him years prior to him running for mayor. Contacted him in 2022 to get some legislation done at the state level, and then what happened was I was bumping into him a lot, like in the middle of 2024, the summertime. I had already gotten wind that he's gonna plan on running. So I remember seeing him at a UN event in September. I'm like, brother, I heard you're running. What's going on? And he's like, yeah, man, we got to do it. Some of his team members knew me. In October, 3 days before he ran for officially announced, they asked if I can coordinate to bring him to the Gurdwara, the Sikh temple. I'm like 100%. At the time, like I said, like many of us, I didn't know what the real chances were.
Yeah.
But I knew he was a good guy that had the best interest for humanity in his heart. And that's why I set that meeting, that engagement up at the two Gurdwaras in Richmond Hill. He came, he spoke,
Yeah.
and then 3 days later he announced his campaign. And then after I was done with my own campaign from January to June, we started something called South Asia with Zohran, in which we kind of like lobbied all South Asians in the Caribbean around the tri-state, and not the tri-state, but mostly New York City, and kind of raise awareness on his campaign, on his platform, and got that word out for the people that were still on the fence. This is the most competitive general election we've seen.
Yeah.
So every vote, every South Asian voter, every Indo-Caribbean voter that came out mattered. That made the difference.
And that is what, we have to look at individuals. We give them that support if we're seeing traits of leadership. As Imam, who is a religious leader, and when I look up to another leader, I expect that leaders in general, that they will look at the interests of others rather than looking at their own vested interests. There's a sense of self-sacrifice, that you're willing to sacrifice your comfort for the comfort of the people. And that is a landmark of a great leader. And when you're seeing people like Zohran, his humility, like you said, he came to the Gurdwara. Uh, I never did. I didn't know him. He was invited to our mosque. We invited him to our mosque when he was campaigning, and he came. He spoke for about 5 minutes, and his words were on point. Like, it resonated so much. He came in, he had his ablution, and he sat 3 lines away from the first line. He did not put himself like as if he is like an authority here, or like he is a guest who comes and sit all the way in the front. He sits like a normal congregant, and he sat with this humble posture. And I looked at his posture, and I know he had different places to visit. I'll come to that. And, we invited him, and he left an impact. The person that was with him basically, he had other events, but still found the time to come into our mosque, the construction site, and looked around, and we shared with him basically what was going on. And from since then, I thought that like he will have a bright future in terms of being servant leader.
And he came to your congregation in May, or was it?
I can't remember which month, but
But it was
I think
before
it
the
was
primary.
before the prep, the initial election.
Yeah. So at that time, he was holding very, very high status.
Yeah, yeah.
And even then, right, like,
Yeah.
who would have thought? And I remember us having these conversations. It was like, we were so excited that one of our own was so close. So many of our folks, whether in the South Asian community, in the Caribbean community, were like, is it gonna be actually possible? And to a certain extent, I think Zohran and his own inner circle were also ready because he even said it. He's like, we had 3 different speeches ready that night, but the victory speech wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a testament as to what a good person, good policies, and a person is grounded in their faith and humanity can do, can get the impact that can have on the rest of
I'll say this, that to our Muslim community primarily, quite often we're saying Zohran is a Muslim, right? And they have a certain expectation what he should do. They have certain expectation in the back of their mind what this mayor should do and what he should not do. But we look at him as a mayor for all. He's a mayor for the Muslims. He's a mayor for the Sikh community. He's a mayor for the Jewish community. He's a mayor for every single minority and non-minority groups here in New York. And he advocates for all of them equally.
May I just add on to that, right? Because I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. It was the biggest blessing to get him elected.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be the biggest challenge. And this is the appeal to our folks to give him some grace.
It's important. It's
give him
important.
some grace, give him some leeway because again, he's navigating a lot. And like Imam Sahib you just mentioned, he's not just a Muslim for our community. He's a Muslim. I mean, sorry, he's not the mayor just for our community. He's a mayor for everybody. And with like close to 9 million people living in this city, it's so important to know that everyone has their own reality. I think he has to kind of navigate through all that.
I'll say this, right? Last week, or it was during this week, we went to the clergy breakfast, and he spoke for a few minutes. His speech resonated with, I'll say, most of the people, if not all of them in the room, including myself. So I streamed it. He quoted, that's why I love him. He quoted the Christian Bible. He quoted the Jewish script. He quoted also the Buddhist script. And he quoted the Quran, the last, his faith. But he was showing the commonality, which was remarkable from him, the commonality of all of these faiths about service and taking care of the stranger. Like how all of these religions are saying that if you have a stranger, if you have someone comes into your community, treat them with kindness and compassion and love. And then he cited the migration of the Prophet from Mecca to Medina. And I share this because I know for a fact that those people here in New York and politicians in the United States and people who don't like him, they look at the segment where he was quoted the Prophet and quoted the Quranic verse from Surah Al-Nahl and said Mamdani is invoking Quranic verses and prophetic tradition. And that speaks volume of their bias and their hate and the intent to divide while you have a leader that is trying to show the commonality between people from diverse faith, that portion was selected. And one thing I'll say to people, like, you have to be just in your assessment and leave your personal biases aside and give the man a chance and support him, because I know for a fact that if people support him, that you will see our lives become much better. Not because he's a Muslim, because he's a humanitarian, because he cares. Which leader, my friend, right, is going to go and engage prior to him becoming mayor? He wasn't a mayor then. He wasn't running for mayor. Will go and engage in a fasting with the cab drivers. Can you remember that?
I was there.
Speak a little bit, but who would do that? Where do you find people doing that these days?
Listen, I think people don't understand how early into his public service life that was. It was not even a year into his assembly term at that time. I was there. My uncle was a cab driver. I even drove a cab when I was in college. Fun. If people didn't know, my father was a cab driver once upon a time. So I come from a family that has a lot of cab drivers in it.
Yeah.
So it's a very near and dear subject to me, right?
Yeah.
And in 2021, I was there. I saw him fast, and he didn't have to be that voice, but he became that voice at the right time. He was one of the first prominent electeds at that time to give voice to it, and that allowed other elected officials to follow suit. Senator Chuck Schumer at AOC as well. So I think like at that time, just seeing him again humble, right?
Yeah.
When the victory was declared, he was dancing to Punjabi music with the cab drivers outside, right? So I think that goes to show Even when he came to Gurudwara, like 3 days before he announced for mayor, he came as he's one of the boys, right? And I think like that kind of humanity and how simple life could be, because I think sometimes we have a tendency, our people especially, to put politicians on a pedestal, that they're untouchable, that the rules don't apply to
Yeah.
them. And I think with him, even now when I see him, it's like he's just one of us, which he is, you know?
Yeah, he's
And
very humble.
very
He
humble,
stands
very humble.
he stands out as a very
And
humble.
one thing a lot of people told me, and I can attest to, he makes you feel seen. And I think that's what the cab drivers felt in 2021. That's what we're all feeling in 2025 and 2026. And that's what in 4 years, we're hoping that that kind of impact resonates with not just the people that voted for him, but also people that didn't vote for him. And in 2020, what, nine, it's a landslide victory.
You know, and there is a message behind this entire campaign and the journey of this campaign for young people that they can achieve anything they want to achieve if they put their heart. If you're sincere, God will grant you. This is my theology I'm speaking of. God will grant you an opening if you're sincere. And if you want to be a person that is engaged civically, or to be a leader, or to see that you can make a difference in your community. I look at a lot of people that runs for office, right? And I'll say to anyone that wants to run for office to ask yourself, why are you running for this position? Is it because you want the title, or is it because your heart is in the place of service? And despite where you at, you might not be a part of a group that or a family that are politicians, but you can dream and dream big. You can become someone who serve and be a servant leader if your heart is in the right place. And you don't have to be rich. You just have to have your heart in the right place and speak to the people. And this should be a lesson for our younger people today. That you can become,
The narrative you were talking
yeah,
about just recently, right? Depending on when this airs, I'm sure a lot of people have watched the Super Bowl.
yeah,
And part of the Super Bowl was Bad Bunny giving a Grammy to a younger kid,
yeah,
which I'm assuming would be him, and just the kid smiled, right?
yeah,
Because immigrant coming to this country, working hard, dreaming when people told him you're crazy. I'm sure that was a Zoran story.
yeah.
I'm sure that was an Imam Safraz story. Actually, I can tell you that's a Japneet story, right? I think those stories are very prevalent when, when you dream so big and you believe so much and you work towards, right? I think so much of this has to do with the work because you cannot be not ready when that perfect opportunity comes. Because if you're not ready, then the opportunity goes to waste. So you need to be ready when the opportunity does present itself. God gives you that opening, but you're so ready that you're like, you know what, God, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna make the best of it. I think that's what we saw with Zoran's victory. And I'm hopeful that, like you mentioned, all the people that are coming into the light, I'm seeing so many people running for office now. So many Muslims, so many South Asians. But I hope
That
that
the heart is in the right
they
place.
bingo.
The heart need to be in the right place. Only that way you will have that impact. If you're doing it just to have that title,
Yeah. The
and
glamour.
and the fame and the recognition, it will not work. Because in my faith, we are told that if leadership is entrusted unto you and you're given that, then one of the biggest responsibility that you have, and you will be questioned about that responsibility.
Right.
That you cannot say, I will look after this section of the community and forget about other section. And this has to do with, I will only look at people that looks like me and that type of thing. So you have to have your heart in the right place and the right reason and an objective behind it. So in the story of Zohran, and he was able to rise to become one of the famous politicians that you have today.
The most famous right
Yeah,
now.
if not the most famous right now.
Right.
And that he inspired many young people, and they should look at his story and let it be an example and something for them to emulate and to follow.
100%, but don't try to
Zoran, exactly.
be who you
You are.
The beauty about
You can be
Zoran,
inspired by his story, but
100%.
not try to,
The beauty about Zoran is he was Zoran.
he was Zoran.
Like, he had a lot of liberal and progressives that he was looking up to, Bernie being one of them, AOCs,
Yeah.
but he was still him, right? Now he's become that role model from the videos people are making, trying to make the same videos he made, from the speaking with his hands, right? Like, I think that there's so many things that people are taking from his own personality.
Yeah.
But Zoran can't give you personality, right? You have to believe in your own messaging.
You have to have your own swag.
You gotta have your own swag. You gotta have your
Yeah,
own swag. And I think when you're genuine with it, when people believe you and like you for you,
yeah.
there's no perfect recipe than that.
I know we have 30 minutes allotted, but I just want to first to say this that there are a lot of religious leaders,
Yeah.
right? From the Muslim community. I know that for a fact. Not leaders alone, religion, people within our community. And I'm sure probably in your community, you're saying, why are we talking about Zohra? Why are we engaging in politics? I often say to them that we have to, as people of faith, enshrine into the civic engagement and to highlight certain things because it's a part of our faith that speaks to us about our very well-being depends on who is there making a decision. When our kids, for example, let me put it, when our parents bang their heads on the wall and say, my kid is, he's smoking, peer pressure at the school, right? We're seeing our daughters' hijabs are pulled off. The Sikh guy that was beaten at the school, right? We went there and we spoke, struggling for his life at the hospital, 15-year-old, right? And we're seeing all of them. And we're saying, this doesn't concern us. Cost of living. We're going out there and we're seeing, going to the shop right now, my friend. I swear by God, just came from the supermarket. I picked up a few things. The bill was close to $70. Just a few things, a few biscuits, milk, and some stuff.
The cornbread I just
The cornbread that you just ate, $70 from and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. So we're concerned about this, but we don't want to play our part to ensure that we are civically engaged and support people that wants to make our life better. Not that we like the young lady says, I don't want to deal with politicians because how politicians are perceived. And we have to interact with politicians. We have to talk about this to ensure that they know that we have certain expectations of them. And when we see people like Zohran that are advocating for humanity and advocating for all and wants us to have a better life, then we have to throw our support because it's very rare that we find character like him that is in public in those political offices.
And I think
What's your thought process about
so. So look, in Sikhi, right? There's a concept called community feeding,
Uh-huh.
which is obviously being religious,
Uh-huh.
holy, meditating is
Yeah.
important. Also, standing up for yourself, defending yourself in your community is also important, right? Especially when so many evils, so much darkness is around you. And we are living in a dark time, Hamza, right? Like, you know, I'm sure there's a word for it in your faith, but we call it al-yug, right? We're clouded constantly
Yeah.
by some sort of evil, right? And it's only gonna continue if we don't continue rising and standing up for each other, right? And I think with Zoran, the way he won is very important. I can't say that enough. He got the most amount of votes in a long, long time. He was the youngest person in over a century to be elected. So, like you were saying, he just hit two really important demographics. One, the young people. Young people have voted, never voted like this in such a long time. Right? And second, he got so many more people engaged with the process
Yeah.
that are always they're always sitting on the sidelines in a local election. So those are two things that kind of create the perfect storm for us to wake up finally. And when you wake up, guess what? People have more clarity and they get to see that when you're a good person and you have actual values, you can also win. And the hope is people see his victory, can emulate that and say, yo, I don't have to sell out my values. I don't have to
Yeah.
be a bad human being. I
Yeah.
could be a person of faith and still win.
Yeah.
I could be a person of value and great character and
Yeah.
still win.
Yeah.
I don't have to sell my soul to APAC to win the
Yeah.
election. I think that to me as a person that's very, very heavily involved with this field is important because that helps our faith communities too. Because so many times, so many years, we felt like we have to live in the shadows. Now, finally, we can live our fullest selves in the light.
So thank you so much. In closing, do you have anything to share with our listeners? And
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Listen, this is always special sitting down with you, your brother. We have such soon. So I hope you have a very safe holiday and a prosperous one.
I just want to say to our listeners and viewers as well that, for a few that you came with our good friend Muhammad with the truck and you've been very integrally involved in distributing, you mosque hopping, as they say, mosque hopping. You go from one mosque to the next and, from one mosque to the next, distributing sweets and candies for people, like on a holiday that is not yours. And I mentioned that not to put a feather in your cap, right?
Oh,
And not to make you have
my turban.
your turban, right? Not to put a feather in your turban, right? But rather, it sends a message, brother, that we are different. We are different. But the love that we have as human beings and as brothers, no one can come between us, right? It's the humanity and the love that bonds us together, right? And if myself being an imam that have a different belief system than you, that have different philosophy than you, different background, we're not from the same country. We don't share the same faith. But that is to show how God created us. That you can love a total stranger. No, seriously, it really resonates. Really, I swear by God. Love you, brother. And I think it's a lot of people can learn from this. Like it's too much hate in the world, and I see myself as a peace advocate. Wallahi, al-azim, I swear by God, because you have to find inner peace to advocate peace, and I ask the people to search for that inner peace, so it would manifest in their action. People who are rowdy, people who chorus, people who have hate, it's because they don't have that inner peace, and they seek to divide. Let us not divide. Let us be people that bonds individuals together.
I think like, you have become a beaming light in so many lives that you may not know that you are in. Um, but I think our brotherhood has shown how much impact like some of the faith leaders we come in touch with. They have the same light, and they're from the Hindu faith, they're from the Jewish faith, right? I think sometimes we see these things from the news outlets that always just talk about hate and division and violence. But when we're within a space together, it's like, no, like there is a better place we can create if we work together on. So I'm so glad I'm on that mission with you, and together we can. I know we can always get to a better place.
Thank you so much, Jack.
My man.
God bless.
Thank you so much.